Do you seem to be having a tough time with JP, just trying to get your head around the matchup, but are still unsure how? Well, in this video, we're going to go over how to play the matchup, A.K.I versus JP. And so if you want to see more content like this that's educational on the channel, then be sure as always to like, comment, and subscribe. And first thing we're going to kick off is the matchup breakdown. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, that is the really in-depth analysis of the matchup with the pros and cons, it's important to understand the matchup itself and each character's objective. Much like we did in the previous video with A.K.I versus Cammy, I'm going to go over very briefly what each character's game plan is and how they can essentially win the game if played correctly. Now, in my opinion, I do feel like this matchup is even, and that's because both characters have ways to essentially nullify the other opponent's pressure if played correctly. So we'll start with A.K.I. A.K.I, of course, is a character that can really be tricky to keep off of. Like, she has ways to get in and stay in. And as you can see on screen, she has her fireball, she has her snake step, she has sinister slide. She's got some really solid pokes that she can utilize at a range where typically JP wants to control, but it's hard for him to do that, especially if A.K.I is in a position where she's just outside of that range to counter poke and also utilize some of her more powerful tools like a level 3 super, as you saw on screen there. So that's really A.K.I.'s game plan. She wants to find her way in. She wants to play just outside of that mid-range to where JP feels uncomfortable to press buttons, and more importantly, where she can apply poison pressure, because when she gets the knockdown, JP has more of a sense of urgency since he doesn't really have ways to deal with A.K.I.'s pressure in the most consistent way. She can apply pressure with a meaty wake-up option with her fireball, or rather her poison ball. So JP has to play a little bit more cognizant and be more aware of things. Now, on the other hand, JP, when he gets control of the matchup, he can dominate and he can really make it hard for A.K.I, especially if he's able to bait out a lot of her OD moves, most notably her snake step, and of course just burning her out, because A.K.I in burnout isn't necessarily the best. She doesn't have any options of escaping that pressure, and that's where JP can bully her, as you can see on screen. So JP, if he can whittle down a lot of A.K.I.'s drive gauge, it becomes even harder for A.K.I to deal with. But if A.K.I can maintain a smart position and also be cognizant of her drive gauge and utilizing it correctly to, again, really close the gap on JP and stay within that smart, just outside of that mid-range, I think it'll be just fine. So all that being said, let's jump into the pros and cons of this matchup. So in this section here, we're just gonna allow the video to go on fast forward, and we're just gonna go over some of the things that went wrong, but we're gonna dissect it even more in detail so you can clearly see exactly the specific points of interest. So as I mentioned before, A.K.I in this matchup, she wants to control that space. She wants to make sure that she's in that specific sweet spot to where she can either counter poke JP, apply pressure, apply poison, and ensure that her offense is consistent. JP, on the other hand, obviously wants to use a lot of his tools to keep her out, in which case you're seeing right here on screen. JP just wants to keep her either at full screen or just outside of that mid-range to where he can punish her if she continues to throw out any sort of normals. So when we slow things down, we're going to go over what went wrong, because we want to really point out the flaws in A.K.I.'s gameplay, but we're going to also point out the pros, because as I mentioned earlier as well, I do think this matchup is quite even if, again, A.K.I is able to determine her spacing correctly and just being able to apply consistent pressure once she's applied poison. So with that being said, we're going to slow things down now. That was the set. It was really fast. So we're going to go back. We're going to fast forward here, so we're going to go back and rewind rather. And so here we are. So the round starts, and immediately Aki throws a Nightshade Pulse, and Kakeru is well aware of that. He jumps in, and sadly, because the recovery on Aki's Nightshade Pulse is really bad, this is essentially a free punish for Kakeru here in his JP. He goes right into his Drive Rush combo, into the corner, and this is now where Aki has to pretty much play the guessing game. So he tries to jump out here. He goes for the cross up down heavy punch, which is a pretty good move for Aki, to be honest with you. It's really good. It's really ambiguous. It allows Aki to really confuse her opponents, whether she's going to be jumping in early or a late jump in. Is really effective. So here we are. He goes for the jump in, he goes for a throw, keeps JP in the corner here, which is really important. So he goes, instead of going for the usual heavy kick into heel strike, which, as I mentioned in my other video, is not a true block string. It can be interrupted, and we'll see that later on in the video. But instead, he opts for the heavy kick into Nightshade Pulse. Now, the reason is because, if you can see on screen, there's a little bit of space between JP and Aki. And because the Nightshade Pulse provides a little slight bit of pushback, this gives Aki the space that she needs to, again, still control the space between her and JP, thus preventing JP from escaping. But of course, this is Kakeru we're talking about here. He knows what he's doing. So he pushes back. And so you can see the little bit of jittery here, right? There's a little bit of jitter between both opponents here. So you can see that Aki walks forward just slightly and then walks back. And then JP does the same thing, because they're trying to find that real sweet spot. And right here, JP finds his sweet spot. He goes for the crouching medium kick, and now he goes for the feint. Drive rush here from Aki. Unfortunately, nothing paid off there for either opponents, but the jump in was effective for JP here. And why was that effective? Well, let's look at what happened here. So both enemies are in counter hit here, and right here is the problem. So this is honestly one of the flaws that I would say Aki deals with, and that is her normals. Her normals, especially her fierce normals, tend to have a pretty slow recovery, and if you whiff them, they are really susceptible to being punished, whether it be on a drive impact or, in this case, a free jump in for JP. So this is really, important to take note of, not to really be using too much of your heavy moves in that scenario. So here we go. This is what I wanted to point out. So again, heavy kick into heel strike is not a true block string. Kakeru here has done his homework, because I've mentioned this before. Again, when Aki is on the floor, when she's in this animation, she is still vulnerable. It is only when the kicks come out that she's able to apply that pressure with the heel strike. But until that animation comes out, she is actually vulnerable, thus giving the opponent a chance to retaliate. And this is what we see here with Kakeru. Very smart here, just goes for a quick jab into combo. Now this was a really interesting little interaction here. So JP goes for the departure window here, and interestingly enough, the jumping light kick trades and gets a punish counter for Aki. Interesting little interaction. It works, it's cool. And not only that, not only was it cool, it actually gave Aki a lot of great pressure. Look how close she is to JP here. This is really what's important. Remember, as I said before, Aki wants to close the gap and make sure that she can apply pressure to ensure that JP is poisoned, because it creates a sense of urgency for the JP to essentially back away. And if it doesn't, well, he's going to be in trouble. So right here, we can see that Aki is right in front of him. Now he goes for the same heel strike combo from before, but I don't think Kakeru was really ready for this situation, so he got away with it this time. So here we go. So look at how Hikaru backs away just a little bit, right? You can see him backing away. He ducks down in a very defensive stance, and you see, look where he is. So the distance between him and JP, this is the sweet spot that I was talking about with regards to Aki. And this is the best reason. This is because Aki can still punish and counter poke JP if he was to press a button. She has standing medium punch, she has standing medium kick, crouch medium kick. So you can do a lot of things at this range, and this particular range is, in my opinion, where Aki can shine in this matchup. So we can see that Hikaru was mindful of this. He made sure to back up ever so slightly to maintain that position. He goes for the sweep, doesn't work, but JP doesn't punish here. Tries to go for the perfect parry, gets thrown for it, and the round is over. So we're going to fast forward here to kind of speed things up. But you can clearly see that there is, some error in judgment, but the play was, in my opinion, was correct. It just wasn't, it didn't pay off, right? It didn't pay off in the long run. So we're going to slow things down again. So this round he goes for a jump in. So JP goes for a jump in. Right now, Aki's playing defensively. She goes for a throw. So basically all that jumping in provided no value for JP at all. Now Aki has what she wants, which is control. And instead of going for a forward throw, she goes for the back throw because now she wants to get JP close to that corner. So you can see JP's fighting for his position here. This is typical JP game. When he has the opponent at full screen, this is what he's enjoying. This is his pleasure. So he goes for the EX Tourbillon, or OD Tourbillon, sorry. And now he's just playing the typical JP game. Now here is the interesting thing. Now, as we've seen in the trailer that showcased the JP versus Aki matchup, and people were talking about how this is going to be the JP killer. Now, it's not necessarily a JP killer, but essentially is a great way to maneuver yourself closer to JP to pressure him. But we can see that JP, or at least Kakeru, was ready for this. So we can see that Hikaru goes for the OD snake step, but gets punished for it, unfortunately, just because by the time he was able to get in front of JP, all of those frames of invulnerability were gone. So this gave JP a chance to punish, and now pretty much right back. So first, let's take a look at the drive gauge too. So we can see that Hikaru had to use gauge to get in, whereas JP right now is sitting on a nice stack. And so this is really where the level of awareness becomes really imperative for Aki, because you don't want to be putting yourself too close to burnout when JP has all of this real estate to work with, because we already know now JP has meter. He's willing to use it to keep Aki at bay, and we've already seen Hikaru use the OD snake step to try and get his way in, but as a result of doing that, he got punished. So now he has to be more mindful as to when to use it. So he goes for a jump in, gets punished for it, tries to go for a crouching medium kick to try and whiff punish, or at least try to counter poke in some way. And here we are, we're right back into the JP blender. And so there was a little bit of a misspaced move there by Kakeru, sorry. So nice anti-air there, goes for the nightshade. And this was a really smart play. So I can understand what Hikaru was trying to do here. He wanted to essentially close the gap once again. Cruel Fate is a great tool outside of the OD snake step to close the gap on JP. However, this move is a little bit risky because if the opponent can see it, they can react to it. And as you can see, now JP has control. He gets the punish, and this is a punish counter combo, which is even worse. So now Aki taking more damage. So smart play here by Kakeru, reversing the roll here. Great combo, by the way. And now he's got Aki right in the corner. Level 1. I honestly respect this. I think Kakeru here was getting a bit greedy. So this was just an emergency button. Get me out of here. Level 1. Now pretty much the situation looks okay, but it's still really dangerous because once again, Aki is extremely low on bar, while JP here is sitting on a nice 4 stack. And so any wrong decision here by Aki can essentially burn her out and pretty much just nullify her way of getting in. So how does this end up? Let's watch. So we see here, tries to go for the standing fierce, goes for a jump in, gets knocked for it. Kakeru is really playing super solid defense right now. They both back up to kind of reset, get a feel for things. And now you can see that Hikaru, you can see he walks back, right? So I'm imagining in his mind, he's thinking, okay, I got to back away. I've got some meter here. Let me go for my last ditch effort. What does he do? He sits down for a wait. He pauses, and then he goes for the OD snake step to see what Kakeru does. Kakeru's ready for it. Goes for the standing medium punch, I believe it was. And now what's happening? Aki's in burnout. So this is exactly what went wrong, is that Hikaru had the right idea, but the plan just did not work out effectively. He tried to use Cruel Fate again to get in. He does. It works out this time for him. But as I mentioned, Kakeru is already ready for this, and Hikaru is in burnout, and that's already a problem for Aki. So the whole point of this con, or what went wrong, was that Aki needs to be mindful of her meter, because that's one of her best tools of applying pressure outside of just using Nightshade Pulse. So if you're an Aki main watching this, make sure to be very cognizant of your meter at all times. Use your OD snake step when necessary, and try to ease your way in slowly, be more patient, and perhaps even use things like your Cruel Fate to try and close the gap. Maybe use your feints a little bit more to try and trick the JP. But as I mentioned, try and maintain that sweet spot between you and JP, and hopefully that'll help you in the long run. So that being said, let's move on to what went right, and therefore we can see just how the Aki player performed. So while the hill is definitely one that requires a lot of effort to climb, Aki can still, again, apply a lot of pressure once she's able to properly space herself and maintain consistent application of poison. So we're going to see here in the pros section just how well Hikaru was able to do that. And because he was able to apply that consistent pressure, mixing things up with his movement, but also throwing in some new moves along the way that we didn't see in the previous set, this was what actually helped him to successfully take Kakeru out for this particular round and set, thus tying things up 2-2. And it's really important to also address a few things that we see. So that was really fast, right? That was the blink of an eye. That was the pro right there. This was pretty much Aki at her best that she could potentially be in this set. And so we're gonna go back, rewind here, and we're gonna just really dissect once again what went right here, because clearly everything went right. It was literally a very, very fast set. 2 rounds went by in a blink of an eye. So let's take a look. So the round starts, and here we are. And what happens? There is some form of aggression, and we can always tell that a player is looking for an aggressive play based on their immediate movement. So we saw that Aki walked forward just a little bit, but then kind of took a step back. So there's a little bit of aggression there from Hikaru's part, but then Kakeru, of course, being the defensive player that he is, he's looking for a chance to strike. So he throws out a Tourbillon. He's like, nope, you're not getting in here. So Hikaru throws out the standing roundhouse, tries to get a clip here, misses the opportunity, but is totally fine. He goes for the drive rush. Very smart play here, and this is where I feel Aki can really take control. Drive rushing, using your OD snake step, these are going to be your best tools to really close the gap and apply that nice pressure upon JP, because right here we can see that Kakeru tried to go for a feint, or I guess he tried to go for a real version of a Tourbillon. Didn't work. Drive rushes right through it, gets punished, countered, and now he's eating a full chunk of damage. He's poisoned now as well. Goes for a free jump in combo, or free jump in here, punish counter. So that means that Kakeru is likely trying to do something. Didn't work. He's in the corner now, and again, this is really where Aki shines. Her corner pressure is really where she takes off, and we can see now JP is in trouble. He's not only low on resources with 3.5 bars, Aki is at full stock, JP is poisoned. He's losing life. He's got no level 1 bar here to really make any sort of comeback or counter. So JP is likely sitting here having to think of a way out. And this is really where, again, A.K.I can really turn the tables in her favor. So Hikaru goes here for a heavy kick. He walks forward, goes for a heavy kick into OD Nightshade Pulse, goes for a drive rush into another punish counter throw. That's massive damage. Now the poison is gone, but look at the bar. Look at the difference in meter. This is really where, again, this can determine the outcome of the game. As we saw in the con section, the tables turn where Kakeru had all the meter and A.K.I had none. Now A.K.I has more meter, JP has none, and now we're seeing a lot more. So see right here, this is the problem, and it's a bad habit. I know as an A.K.I main myself, we love to use the heal strike as our block string, but I hate to repeat myself, but I think it's important to just address it once more, that the heal strike variant from your heavy kick is not a true block string. It can be punished, and we can clearly see here that Kakeru was ready for it, gets punished for it. The punish counter, so it's going to hurt even more. And what's worse is now A.K.I is right where JP wants her to be, which is essentially full screen. And now A.K.I needs to find a way back in through all of this pressure. Fortunately, it's going to work out in A.K.I.'s favor, spoiler alert, but let's see how it all pans out. So he backs away here, walks forward, right? Trying to play it patiently here because this is really the patient game now. What's important here is also the life lead. When you have a life lead, doesn't matter what character you're using, whether it's A.K.I, Jamie, Cammy, doesn't matter. If you have a life lead like this, you don't need to play greedy. I see a lot of players who just want to end the round because they see that they have meter or they have resources and they use it not knowing that you have a substantial life lead that you can sit on, and you can let the opponent be the one to hang themselves. And we're going to see that right here. So goes for a block, plays defensive, uses the OD snake step to escape that pressure, goes back for a jump in, gets punished sadly for it. And now this is really where things get really, really dicey. Again, I mentioned A.K.I in burnout is not a good spot to be in, especially against JP, who can just chip away at you. And here we are. Goes for a jump in again. Sadly, Kakeru misses his combo. I think if he hit this combo here, it would have been a different story. But because he missed the combo, Hikaru capitalizes. Now JP's poisoned. He's losing his life here. And here is the most important thing I want to address with A.K.I. A.K.I, when she applies poison, she's winning. And the reason why I say that is because you, the A.K.I player, are not losing anything. For that matter, you're applying poison, and the person losing is the person who's losing their life. And in this case, once JP is poisoned, he's losing his life every single time, whereas A.K.I can just play it safe. So anytime that you have a poison advantage, just play to it. Play it to your advantage. You have the advantage basically to say, I have a life lead, you're dying, I'm not. That's a really rare thing to have as an ability in Street Fighter, and just being able to win the game primarily by not even touching your opponent is a huge thing. And so this is a new tactic here. So what happens? So knowing that he's in burnout, knowing that he can't apply pressure up close, he has no way of getting in, there's no need to even go for a risky play like a Cruel Fate or any feint snake steps in neutral. No need for that. What does he do? He backs away. He recognizes that he has 2 bars here. Hikaru goes, he says, okay, you know what, look at him, he's buffering. You can see this, you can see at the bottom right here, he walks back, he's buffering, and he thinks that Kakeru probably doesn't even realize that's happening. What happens? He goes for the snap to put departure down, and then boom, Hikaru goes for reaction, buffer into level 2, and that right there seals the deal for the first round. So that was a really effective play. I think this is really where I think A.K.I can really take advantage of JP, is when she has that level 2 super, she can really apply some good pressure from mid-screen, long range is really, really good. So smart play there by Hikaru there. So we're gonna move forward. We're gonna fast forward things just a little bit, just a tad. Okay, so we're gonna go into round 2 now. Okay, this is the final round, and we're gonna see just what happened here. So defensive position always, right? A.K.I, defensive position, holding down back. We've seen in the previous set where Kakeru went for a Tourbillon, the low version, and that can obviously just, you know, chip away at A.K.I. He could have gone for the overhead version as well, but not in this case. So we can see here that defense position is made, walks forward, inches back and forth, trying to find that proper space, gets hooked for it in the eyeballs. So this is really where I think Nightshade Pulse shines as a tool, is that because of its slow movement speed, people think they can jump over the Nightshade Pulse when compared to other fireballs. It's really slow, it catches Kakeru here, and now the smart play here was, okay, I'm gonna throw a fireball because I can easily walk behind it, or in this case he goes for a snake step. Now look where he is. Not only is JP poisoned from the essential anti-air poison ball, now Hikaru has closed the gap. He's right in front of JP's face. He's still poisoned, goes for a free throw setup here, and now he's back to neutral. But he catches Kakeru here. Great use of drive rush. This is really what you need to be utilizing as A.K.I, is when you find that position, when you find that sweet spot, you throw a fireball and you immediately want to close the gap and start punishing. And right here we can see that goes for the heel strike combo. He's still poisoned. This is going to hurt even more. Goes for the juggle, toxic wreath, drive rush, heavy kick into venomous fang. Now he goes for the poison setup. He goes for the meaty poison ball, blocks it here. Now this is a great set play, and for a lot of reasons. For one, this poison, the orchid spring maintains your poison. This is good because if, let's say, JP was to wake up with OD amnesia, which is what most JPs like to do, it doesn't win against projectiles. So this is a great check to Kakeru, in the sense that if you were to throw OD amnesia, I'm going to throw a meaty at you. What are you going to do about it? In this case, he goes for a parry. So he sits there, he holds back, goes for the cruel fate, the OD version, gets punished for it because he panics. And instead of going for, you know, a cool combo, Hikaru just opts to play it safe. He keeps JP in the corner and he reapplies the orchid spring on the floor. Gets the nice whiff punish here with the standing heavy kick, goes into venomous fang, into the combo, and boom, finishes the round and the set, thus tying it up at 2-2. So we can see right then and there that everything went right. A.K.I played really well. She played her spacing well enough. She applied pressure by utilizing her OD snake step at the right moments, but also threw in her level 2 from full screen to punish JP because he was getting too greedy with his his little mind games. And also just mixing up your block strings, mixing up your pressure strings. One thing to note though that we did not see in this set was the use of Serpent Lash in neutral. And you're probably asking yourself why was it not used? Well, Serpent Lash as a move is typically one that you want to be using against characters that have like really good fireballs, right? But in this case, you're dealing with JP. JP has so many tools at his disposal that using a Serpent Lash in neutral just won't be as effective. It's not that it won't work, it's just that JP just has so many ways of really neutralizing a lot of your options if you're not careful. And so that's likely the reason why you didn't see Serpent Lash being used. You typically want to use Serpent Lash in matches. Oh, see right there, we saw it, the OD version, but it didn't really connect with anything. But you typically want to use the OD version of Serpent Lash or just regular Serpent Lash when you're in a matchup with other fireball characters, notably Ken or Ryu, maybe even DJ. And that's just because your Serpent Lash is a great way to check the opponent's fireballs, but also counterpoke them from range. So all in all, I hope this video has given you a good idea and perspective on how to deal with JP, making sure to utilize your space in the most optimal way. not really being too fancy, but most importantly, playing to your advantage when you have it, making sure to be mindful of your gauge, your drive gauge, most importantly, because you want to make sure you have enough to utilize your OD Snake Step, or even just OD Cruel Fate, OD Nightshade Pulse. Making sure you have those things available at your disposal is going to be really impactful in this matchup. So all that being said, I hope this has helped you. For more content like this, be sure as always to like, comment, subscribe. Look forward to the next analysis guide for the A.K.I matchup series. And until then, you warriors, as always, stay strong and keep fighting. Thank you again to this YouTuber as well. I want to just give a quick shout out to them as well. Shout outs to SF6 High Level Replays. Thank you so much. Take care, folks. Peace.